Before you buy an RX 7800 XT in 2024, I'm just letting you know that performance of this card has changed since it was released a few months ago. We'll be running this card on the latest AMD drivers, and we'll be playing some competitive games wherein speed, responsiveness, and stability is highly critical. There are some games wherein the RX 7800 XT has improved, and there are also some games wherein probably lost a little bit of performance too. And to add contrast to this, we're also going to be comparing the RX 7800 XT with Nvidia's entry-level RTX 4060. Why the RTX 4060? I'm not an Nvidia shill, but that's the only modern card that I have and bought with my own money. And it would also be good to see the performance gap between these two cards, considering there is about like $200 difference between the two.
And for those who are new to the channel, we are running both cards on our Ryzen 5800 X3D setup. Latest drivers were used at the time of recording, and all benchmarks were run at least 3 times before we started recording to ensure stability. And to reflect real-world competitive gaming experience, we have used 1440p resolution with competitive settings on all our games, tuned for maximum visibility and performance. Let's start with Warzone. From our previous video, you may have known that AMD cards have serious issues in Warzone. This time around, it seems that it has been fixed. Well, sort of. Here's a 1080p gameplay of our RX 7800 XT comparing our both ends of the VRAM scale targets. Performance is pretty close, and it's actually not bad as before, but for the sake of consistency, we'll just use 50 VRAM target moving forward. Here's the 1440p gameplay with FSR 3 turned on, no frame generation compared to the standard 1080p gameplay. On firing shots, you do see that the 1080p possibly is leading a bit, but it's pretty negligible. And because having 1440p resolution gives you that visibility advantage on Warzone, there's no reason not to use this. Okay, how about against the 4060? Well, here it is, and right off the bat, boys, you can see the clear difference between the two cards. The 4060 actually has better stability in Warzone. Sure, the average FPS still goes to the AMD card, but look at that stability. Now, AMD used to dominate Nvidia cards in Warzone and Call of Duty, but this is not the case anymore. Even if you enable anti-lag with AMD, it's just a bit erratic compared to the Nvidia card. On real-world competitive gameplay, you can see that erratic nature of the RX 7800 XT in Warzone. Now take a look at that frame time chart, boys, and this is confirmed with our 1% low reading. Sure, it's not as bad as our previous video, but instability like this will hurt you more on competitive games where frame times significantly affect your aim and precision. And speaking of stability, here's a quick word from our sponsor.
Nah, I'm kidding, boys. There's no sponsor, but if you're enjoying this content, hit that like button, and let's move on to the next game.
Apex Legends. Let's start off with some standard static shots, and here we have the RX 7800 XT compared against the RTX 4060. There's no contest here. The RX 7800 XT just dominates the 4060 in 1440p. The RX 7800 XT does demand a lot of GPU power though, so let's add some action scenes here. And on these firing shots, we do see that the RX 7800 XT is about to hit that 300 FPS gap with really good lows, and it's also not that bad for the 4060 even at 4040p. But let's have a look at heavy action scenes here. Let's throw some smokes and Bangalore's ultimate, and both cards seem to be stable with the RX 7800 XT obviously having better FPS. On some real-world gameplay, we have pretty solid performance here with the RX 7800 XT, maxing out our GPU usage and pushing those FPS over 200 with mostly stable frame times. When we do engage in action scenes, there are some minor spikes here, but that does happen with Apex Legends. Overall, still solid performance. 1% lows are pretty good, and we'll probably just disregard to put 1% lows, but because as mentioned, this is heavily affected by server responses and server issues and even anti-cheat. Next game is Fortnite. Let's start with our DX12 benchmark against the RTX 4060. DX12 is AMD's strength in Fortnite, and this is clearly shown here, especially at 1440p. The GPU utilization is maxed out at 100%, and we are seeing pretty good numbers here for the AMD card. Albeit we are also pushing really high GPU power. Easy win here for the RX 7800 XT. Okay, let's move on to everyone's favorite Fortnite setting, performance mode. This one here is actually one of AMD's bane, which I still think they're struggling to fix, and I've been hammering about this one for ages as far as I can remember. On the surface, the RX 7800 XT runs well. Look at that, pretty solid FPS. Lows are not that bad, and 0.1% lows still goes to the Nvidia card. We're not GPU bottleneck here, but we all know that this mode works differently for both cards. However, you still see AMD's clock speed are still all over the place. Look at that compared to Nvidia's clock speeds. Once again, for the sake of science, we're going to fix this by manually tuning our RX 7800 XT and setting higher minimum clock speeds. I mean, come on AMD, you can fix this issue. Okay, here you go. Look at that. A night and day difference, boys. Look at that 1% lows. It basically just solves the 1% low issue. 100 FPS difference between the two cards. And dang, look at that stability. So yeah, we're definitely winning here. And before we move on, here's all three APIs with the RX 7800 XT. For everyone that's curious, you know which one you pick. Okay. Let's hit some real-world gameplay here, and we're actually pretty good with our RX 7800 XT. Now, there are some random frame time spikes on a real-world Fortnite game, but this is mostly SMC'd, server related or anti-cheat related. There's nothing you can do about it. Hence why I always say to disregard the 0.1% lows on an actual game. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this game. AMD cards are actually feasible now at competitive gaming, provided that you actually need to do those tweaks, which I'm hoping AMD, if you're watching this video, please fix that. Let's move on to Valorant. Highly competitive game, high refresh, and let's hit the 4040p comparison here. We're both GPU bottleneck in this scenario, hence why AMD is pulling ahead on this run, but let's look at the heavy action scenes where it really matters. And on this case, it seems like we are getting better stability with the Nvidia card, lesser FPS, but better stability compared to the RX 7800 XT, although it's still pretty decent. Okay, real world gameplay now, and we've disabled the low metrics here because it does change a lot, especially when we switch scenes between Omen's ability and every other ability in Valorant. This is still a good experience. We are running 400 FPS here. The frame time spikes is normal in this game, especially in the early game. It does disappear mid and late game. Clock speeds are good too with Valorant, even though we are not GPU bound here. We are able to pull through 2400 megahertz. No complaints here. Pretty good, pretty good. I'm happy. Next one is PUBG DX11 Enhance API. On running shots, no contest here. The RX 7800 XT obviously demolishes the 4060, but this is expected considering the price difference between the two. We have maxed out our GPU here with the RX 7800 XT, and on our heavier action benchmark, the RX 7800 XT is still pretty good and retains that lead over the RTX 4060. One more thing to add here is that the GPU power difference between the two, yeah, I'm hoping that we have an RTX 4070 to compare, but unfortunately we don't have one, so yep. Okay, real world gameplay now, and on bigger maps like Erangel, we are doing actually quite good. Over 250 FPS with decent lows. Frame times are not too bad as well. I mean, it's pretty good, no complaints here. Those minor frame time spikes is normal because of PUBG's game engine. However, in smaller maps wherein we do get a whole bunch of players in a tiny area all at once, we do get like a bit lower lows, and this is just expected with PUBG's engine. It's still not bad. We are still running pretty good FPS, and frame times are good for the most part. We're able to get those frags in, and we nearly brought down the squad here. Okay, next one is the finals. We are running 1440p with upscalers here, so FSR 2 for the RX 7800 XT and DLSS for the RTX 4060. Once again, clear lead here for the RX 7800 XT, which is expected. We are really pushing it here, and it seems that the RTX 4060 is pretty decent too. However, when we go to heavy action scenes, the Nvidia card just goes ballistic on its frame times. Better stability still goes to the AMD card on this one, and this may be due to the 4060s being an entry level with that limited bus width and all those other limitations. Gameplay wise, we are crushing this one, boys, regardless of the effects in game. Things blowing up, flames, fragging, we are getting pretty good FPS with our RX 7800 XT. Solid stability. FPS is over 200, frame times are pretty straight. I'm really happy with this one. It seems like this game just loves AMD cards. Let's hope AMD maintains this performance for the finals. And speaking of AMD, if you're on a budget, the RX 6600 non-XT may be something you should consider, especially when it's priced below $200. Now, we've recently revisited this card a couple of weeks ago, so if you're interested in that, just click this video right here, and we'll see you guys over there.